It's going on, traders, and welcome back to IFX. So let's talk about something very important. This is part 3, and to me this is crucial in order for us to make better entries. Now, we talked about on part 1 that we're only going to be selling on the red zones, and we're only going to look for buy entries on the green zones. That's great. Now, also we talked about that we have an active trading area, which is going to be entries inside yesterday's or below yesterday's high and above yesterday's low. Okay, that's very simple. And also we talked about how we would like to make an entry when we are inside prior for our candle high and low, and then maybe we can consider the second prior for our candle. Okay, we would like to consider that, right? So we talked about that, for example, if this was below yesterday's high, because this is yesterday's high right here, this would have been a good entry, right? Price came down. Now there's gonna be something that I want you to really keep in mind, and that is really, really important, because this will make a difference even if you're entering inside yesterday's high and low and you're on a sell zone. Still gonna be dangerous. Now, this is the key. So since we're looking at yesterday's high and low, we also need to consider prior yesterday's high and low. So if you see prior yesterday's high and low is right here, and it kind of makes like a step up. Okay, do you see that? It's a step up, and this is going to act as a nice support. Okay, if price stays in here and we're trying to sell in here, if we get an alert, and even if it meets the candle criteria and it meets the RSI criteria, we would have to be extra careful, because sometimes those trades don't work. It's like we are inside we're inside this bubble in here, that instead for us thinking that like, oh wait, we are on a red zone and our side is all the way up over here, then fine, we're gonna look for sell entries. While that could be the case, well, not necessarily all the time. So the idea is that the only way that I would like myself to enter when we are in this bubble, when prior yesterday's high is here and yesterday's high over here, remember, it's acting as a nice support, and we're inside of this bubble, then the idea in here is for me to look for sell entries only when it makes a double top. And what does that mean is that, let's just say you might get an arrow somewhere in here, and then the idea is the price to come down and then maybe give me an arrow again, and then I would get a second arrow in here. Okay, this will be the only way I could enter. Okay, so it will be the only, if I can get, this would be called a double top. Okay, meaning that price came down and then it went back up again, and then on the second arrow I would consider an entry as long as we're still inside yesterday's high. So we're not going to consider the first arrow even if everything's met, as long as we are inside this bubble. Okay, we need to break below it, or I need to make sure that we get a double top in order for me to enter on this entry. Okay, so if we are trading manually, or if we are trading with the EA or robot, we're not going to activate a sell entry as long as we are still inside in this bubble, or if I don't see a double top. Okay, meaning that we got the first arrow, we got an arrow at the bottom, and then we get another arrow on top, and then I would consider a sell entry like that. Okay, all right, in here again, we're not going to consider anything because we are outside. We're not selling inside in yesterday's high, so this would be void and invalid, and we're not going to enter in here. Okay, that's something that you need to keep in mind. Now, take a look in here. This was an awesome entry. Again, we are inside this bubble, and then this is what I'm talking about. You see how we have here now the double top. Okay, we got one Price came down, we got an arrow on top, and if we get an arrow, the second arrow, then we can consider this entry to sell, because again, we are inside this bubble, so we don't know if price is going to come down. So we have some type of news because of that candle. And then again, this acted as a nice support, okay? And then it acted as a nice support. We got an arrow, and then, well, what did price do? It went all the way to the top, all right? So the same thing is going to happen at the bottom, right, when we're looking for sell entries. And what do I mean with that? Is that the idea, what's the idea behind here? Is that, yes, we want to look for sell or buy entries, but we want to make sure where we are compared to prior day, okay? So again, let's just say I'm looking at this day, and then where's my prior yesterday's low or high? Well, this is over here, and then yesterday's low is over here. So what do I have in here again? I have a nice resistance on the top, and then we are in a bubble, okay? So I have to be very careful. This is no-brainer that I would love to sell on the red zones. Unfortunately, well, it got really close in here and it went down a little bit. So we know we would love for the RSI at the bottom to hit higher levels and then to get closer to these zones in order for us to sell. Like, this would be a wonderful, wonderful entry. We will have to be really careful when we're buying. Again, here we got buy entries outside of yesterday's low, so we would not really consider unless you want to risk it and then give it a try and see what's up with that, right? Now, when we're not inside a bubble, whether on top or at the bottom, right? So then we can consider sell entries anytime, okay? We can just say, you know, well, as long as the RSI got really close to the 70 and we hit a level, you know, we can consider an entry. So right here, this was an entry, and right here, this was an entry. And then again, we're not going to look for buys, well, because unfortunately, we're below yesterday's low, so we will not consider any entries, okay? So here's another example. Here, price was in a bubble. It hit the first time, and then, well, we got some type of news, and then it was able to break it, but then it came back down again, because again, we are not inside a bubble on top, okay? So let's just take a look at another pair just to get more examples. But to me, this is so important, because even if we are inside yesterday's high and low, we still need to know more or less what is going on so that we can make entries, the best possible entries, right? So let's take a look in here on this dollar CAD right here. What do you see in here? Well, this is yesterday's low. This is prior yesterday's low. What is this doing? Is acting as a nice resistance, and we are inside this bubble. So it's best to look for sell entries, and then we can consider a buy entry if we have a double top or bottom. So in here, maybe we can consider an entry because we got on today, we got this first one, we got a sell. So maybe this would work, even though it not really met our conditions, you know, on the blue area, but because the blue area is way below this yesterday's low, then maybe we can consider this buy over here, okay? But now, again, when price meets our criteria, you know, it's great to enter, of course, following yesterday's high and low. Now, you have to be very careful when you're entering, and the entry maybe happens too close. If it closes below the MA, great, but if it happens to hit it and then not really close above it, you have to be very careful, and you would have to get out of that entry. The sooner, the better it is, okay? So take a look in here again. We're in another bubble. It's like up, you know, top bubble pretty much. We're inside in here, as you can tell. Price came down a little bit, and then maybe it was better to buy, and then this was the entry, okay? So now, again, if we're not inside of any bubble, so now you were able to see what a bubble looks like, right? So if we're not inside of any bubble of any sort, then it is easier to see where we would like to sell. So if price extends on the RSI and it hits any of my red zones, and then if we are far away from the MA, then I can just give it a try and consider. Now, if you see that is really good, that forget it, that price hit the 70 levels, and then although we might not be inside the prior 4-hour highs and lows, again, you can still consider an entry. Just give it a tight stop loss on that when a candle closes above the high of that current high, 4-hour high, okay, or low. So in here, maybe you can consider that. So sometimes we don't have to be so rigid with the first time, but, again, if you're starting out, I would like for you to follow that strategy, okay? So right here, we got an arrow, which would happen to be already the beginning of the new 4-hour candle. And so it happened inside my 4-hour high and low. And then what did price do? It went down nicely. RSI was on the top. And we were not inside of any bubble, okay? Which is very, very important. Again, what is a bubble? Right here, we have the top bubble, right? Price happens to be inside here. Again, there are exceptions where do price come down and it does come back to this price. So we have the top bubble, and then we have the bottom bubble, right? Which, again, could be, this is the bottom bubble right here. Let's just pretty much consider that. So we are inside of here, and then it is much easier for price to pull down when we are inside of this than not, okay? And if we happen to be, let's just take a look at another pair just to kind of experience different pairs and then kind of have an idea of what is it that we're looking for in here, okay? So if you take a look at Euro New Zealand right here currently, so when you first started on the day, you're like, okay, where am I, right? Wonderful. Am I inside a bubble, or we're not in any bubble whatsoever? So what can I do today? So here, we're inside of this sell bubble. Well, great. I would love to look for sell entries as soon as price gets into the red zones, and then voila, right? Like this was the entry, price came all the way down. Can I consider a buy entry? Well, again, we would love to buy only if we have double bottoms, right? But I would really hope that the entry happens inside my yesterday's low, so I could be more confident on that entry, right? Now, again, here, can we sell in here? Can we sell on the green zones? Yes, you can, and I would only allow it to happen only if we are below yesterday's low, and then the opposite when we're buying, okay? So very important that you do that. So if, this would be a great entry in the green zones as long as the RSI comes out a little bit. And if it's the first time that it came out, it would be even wonderful. It would be great, okay? All right, so right here, we have in Euro New Zealand, okay? We have a top bubble in here, right? But we can maybe consider this a second, you see how we got this arrow to the top? Maybe we can consider this as a double top in here. Maybe we can give it a try as long as it's inside my 4-hour prior high and low, and then we can give it a tight stop loss, okay? But we have to make sure price is breaking below the moving average so that it can reach to the lower levels, okay? So that's pretty much very, very important that you do that, because there are times when, yes, again, we just talked about the exceptions, that if we would like to sell inside the top bubbles, if we get like a double top, right? And then the opposite. This was a great entry right here. All right, so I think you get the idea of what we're talking about in here. So in summary, what we're looking for is that we're looking for sell entries as close as we can to the sell zones. And we want to make sure that we are inside yesterday's low if we're selling. But we want to make sure that we're not inside a top bubble, okay? That we want to make sure that price is gonna come down and it's not gonna act, we don't have so much support that is not gonna let us drop. Okay, this right here will be the best entries for me because I know this acting as a resistance and is helping me push down the price. Okay, and then the opposite when we like to buy, right? We want to be able to buy on the green zones. We want to make sure the RSI comes out to this as close as we can to the 30, and then we want to make sure that we are not in a sell bubble, because then it could be that the trade might not work out so much easy, right? And that's pretty much it, right? All we want to do, we want to make sure where we do that opposite, and then where are we going to get out? You know, in the end, it all depends. We can do RSI, you know, if it hits to the bottom, then we're gonna get out. You know, if it hits to the top, we're gonna get out. Or, you know, the first two levels, pretty much, you know, white area, first two levels are great ways to also exit the market using the pullback zones. All right, so if you have any questions, please let me know. You can always write on the community. So if you have any questions, or you can email me also if you have any questions.